Terry, do you have a question?
I do. I realize that I probably won't be welcomed at home if I don't ask this question. The ski slalom buoys that are set up outside the swim buoys in the South End every year, if you think that the boats that are using that ski slalom are not going into the milfoil area and slicing up and fragmented, that I would invite you to come down there when they're out there. My husband swims in the lake. A lot of you know Joe swims in the lake from April to October, and he battles it out with those ski boats through the season when they're out there. Tend to be very unconcerned with people in the water. He's had any number of confrontations with them, but it's also, like I say, it's okay, if you don't care if they kill off my husband, it's the milfoil. Let's make it the milfoil. But how is that? I mean, we have such a small area of the lake that's reserved for swimmers. I mean, that tiny little area off our big public beach, and a tiny little area up at the end of the lake in the park there. Those are the only areas that are designated swimmer areas, and it's like the whole rest of the lake belongs to the boats. And how is that fair or reasonable or whatever? And how if you only think about it from the perspective of the milfoil, okay, how does that make sense when they're constantly running back and forth in the worst infested part of the lake?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, and I'm not going to speak to that from the perspective that we now have our own RCMP officer. That RCMP officer has a great deal of power. And the first thing that they will say at any meeting when they attend, we always attend the lake access only meeting, boat access only meeting. The first question always is, why aren't you wherever? And the answer always is, because nobody's told us. So what I need you to do when you see something like that happening in the summer, I need you to pick up that phone and call our RCMP detachment and tell them. And tell them, if you can at least tell them approximate time. I mean, Chris appeared at 3 o'clock in the morning up at the north end, and people just went, what are you doing here? And they were totally shocked to see him there. And, of course, that stopped some of that partying and that wakeboarding that was going on after midnight. So what I need you to do is report that. And please, don't say, geez, there's no point now because it happened at 3 and this is 4. Report it anyway, because the person that gets that phone call, the more phone calls they get, and our RCMP staff sergeant will tell you, they are designed to respond to the most complaints they get. So please, whatever complaint you have out there, I want you to get on that phone and call. Please.
But Grace, is there under whose authority does a person go out into the lake, the Crown property, and install a water ski slalom course? And if you can't legally float a wharf or a dock off your waterfront property, how do you get the right or the authority to install a water ski?
They don't have, Terry, and that's the bottom line. Is we've been trying.
If it mysteriously disappears from a nighttime swim, I'm just hypothetical.
Okay, Brendan's going to also talk. It isn't right.
It's not right. Over the years, before we met Chris, we'd go out, we'd take pictures, we'd GPS it, we'd phone BC Parks, because 100 meters out into the lake is still considered Provincial Park, okay? And the rest is Crown. So we'd take pictures and we'd phone Dave Webster, we'd phone the police, and we'd phone Transport Canada, and then somebody'd go out there and it was gone. And then 2 days later, it's set up somewhere else. By the time we get another call, people come out so much and then they just kind of go, well, with Chris being here and going out in the middle of the night, they won't have time to
It's not gone, Brenda. They leave their anchors there year-round. Mm-hmm. It's not gone. They're there. They just come in. All they have to do is go down and unhook them.
Well, we are trying.
Yeah, so it's been going on for, I know, a long time. Yeah.
We are trying. Part of the issue, no matter what we're unhappy about, is trying to get someone to do something about it. And the only way you get that to happen is to just beat on everybody. And it's a sad thing to say. It's not unlike the health issues we were talking about earlier. If you want a result, you just got to beat down the doors.
Just to add to that, if we were instructed to remove it as part of our work on a day-to-day basis, that we could remove those buoys, we could take out the anchors if we get approval to do so. But it is an easy solution as long as the legislation is there.
Well, if the other question is, what about if it is Provincial Park 100 meters out? Why don't we have a buoy system 100 meters out? Why are the swimmers confined to this 25-foot area or whatever it is? I mean, you could walk out to the buoys most of the year. If the park is there, why isn't it buoyed out there? It would also keep the speed of the boats that come in there in and out of those part of the wharfs and campgrounds and stuff.
And Parks Board isn't here, so that's really unfortunate. Because that's a question for Parks Board. And believe me, we'll be asking that exact question again. Thank you, Andy. David, did you have a question?
Dave Durant. This was to Mark. I know when we were first discussing riparian regulations, we assumed the provincial government was potentially going to legislate the whole province. Do we still feel that way?
There's been no movement to expand the area that has been designated for the riparian areas regulation beyond those regional districts that it currently applies to, and I've heard of no legislative changes to increase that area. I don't know if Lisa may be more...
Yeah, no, I would give the same answer at this time. My understanding is there's no initiative to expand that.
And that could be largely because there's no money to police anything.
Well, effectively takes away one of the reasons that we're voting. It's only one. There are other important ones.
And, I don't think anybody has the answer to that anymore.
The other thing is it's been a challenge, I think, at the provincial and local government level to manage that regulation where it currently applies, let alone expanding it to other areas.
And I had just a follow-up. Been talking a lot with Bill about the whole issue of education versus regulation. How do you get people to do the right thing who live on the lake versus having the regional district legislate? And anybody has any input into that who live on the lake?
And I think that will continue to be a source of discussion because we can do either or a combination of both in terms of the regulation, approaching it as we are currently proposing to do with the development permit area, or develop an educational program to let people, basically educate people as to the benefits of protecting riparian areas and ultimately shaming those people who don't protect their riparian areas, or a combination of the two. And probably the most effective response would be to have a combination of the two.
And that is exactly what I'm going to work on this summer, through media, through publications, through kudos to those people who voluntarily do it.
What about positive reinforcement? Are there any ways of giving people...
Exactly. I think it's been a pretty loud message that we're getting from Bill Streetbrook's group and a few other people that they're concerned about the land they own and what's happening with that and how much more people are going to tell them what to do with it. If we can show them the pluses on that by doing positive publications and positive reinforcement, then maybe people will see that that's a really good way to go. So that's where I'm going to go this summer.
One thing that we've learned a bit about the weevil too is that the adult flies from the water to the shore and overwinters in the duff layers. Basically, I guess natural vegetation. I don't know what roses and things like that fit in, but nonetheless, you need to have that shoreline for the weevil to overwinter. So that's something very important to consider.
It is, yeah.
Just to take that a step farther, I was talking to Environmental Sciences about this, and what they were saying is that once those weevils come up on the shore, they don't stay in that duff, they burrow into the sand.
Okay.
So if You leave that duff there. Some people get really persnickety about their shore. Me, I'm kind of lazy. But, they want it just straight sand or grass or whatever. So they go out there and they want all that duff gone. So leave the duff there for 2-3 weeks, a little bit longer maybe. Those weevils burrow into the ground, take the duff out, do what you want.
Okay, are there more questions around that? All righty. So where else do you guys want to go? Home? Yeah.
Start the weevil farm.
I've got to say that the message we want to get out is a positive message. Yes, we've done a lot of work. Yes, there's all kinds of information you can get anytime you want to get it. It's not hiding. It's very much there. Do you have questions?
Not so much a question, but I'm Kathy Scott May. As I mentioned, I'm working as a coordinator for an ecosystem restoration program that is trying to look at these issues across the Selkirk Resource District, which is now Golden, Revelstoke, the West Kootenay, and Boundary. So, again, kudos to your group for the energy and the commitment. I certainly see this as an area of intense activity and interest across the region relative to what else is happening. But I'm also seeing some similarities. And so if it's at all helpful, I'd offer a couple of perspectives. When I listen to you talking about specific issues, managing bears, deciding what strategies to use around milfoil or other kinds of things, the question that comes back to me is, how does that fit into an overall framework? So are you talking about trying to protect your options because overall you see your ecosystems as relatively healthy, and so you need to choose which strategies are going to be most effective in maintaining your future options? Or are you saying that the ecosystem in this area has been damaged and you have to choose the strategies that will be most effective in reducing the risks associated with those damaged ecosystems? The risks to the ecosystems themselves, but also the risks that are economic and social. That's not clear to me from having sat and listened to you today. And I heard a couple people say, well, we have to expand our partnerships. We need to look for different resources. Those funders and those partners need to understand what your overall framework is. Are you trying to maintain options because generally you're doing well and you want to continue to do well in the future? Or are you trying to deal with damages? The ecosystem restoration program has been given rise out of the work that's been going on in the East Kootenay for many years. What they feel was most effective is getting people together based on an agreement that, okay, we acknowledge that damages have been done and we want to come together and take action to address that. That's the thing that got them into the tent. They had spent years, just as the rest of us have spent years. I'm a survivor of the land use planning process. I was actually the person that led the Kootenay Boundary Land Use Plan implementation strategy. So, getting people together in a room and talking about values and resolving user conflicts, I get the sense that there's not a lot of people wanting to use that as the avenue in for the discussions. But where we may find the common ground is, how do we get to agreement on what the tangible projects are that need to be taking place, the on the ground, the dealing with the docks, the very specific things. But again, to get that group of people and that energy together, it's what's your main driver? What's the framework you're working within? So in terms of the user conflicts, again, it comes back to my way of seeing this is I ask the question, are the user conflicts, how does that relate to your ecosystems? Again, is it threatening your options, or is it contributing to the damages that you've already been able to identify? Again, I'm not understanding where the community is seeing those connections, and if I'm not seeing that, it may be more difficult to reach out to other partners, including funders. And just a final comment on the education versus regulation. I'm seeing a shift. There's been a lot of public education done in this region on lots of these kinds of issues. That's about providing good information to people to empower them to make good decisions. I think it's been fairly clear that that can be costly in terms of money and time and energy, and it's not always effective unless there is that regulatory framework that backs it up. What I'm hearing is some groups are now starting to do a shift. They're saying the regulations are either not there or they're not being enforced, we're going to start moving to what we call, some people call it behavior modification, I call it social marketing. They're moving away from education to trying to convince, trying to sell what some people decide is the best approach. It's a slippery slope, especially for professionals, because you don't get to go back in time and try to take that more objective approach to educating and empowering the community. But they're saying unless they've got that regulatory framework and enforcement working with them, their efforts around education are not being achieving the kinds of results that they feel are needed for the investments being made. So I'm hearing a number of groups struggle with that, and I just wanted to reflect that when I heard the discussion that you guys are having about how do these things fit together. So I'm not sure if that's at all useful, but I'm out talking to lots of groups and lots of people in industries, and I'm hearing similar kinds of conversations and struggles, but congratulations and kudos for the advancements and the accomplishments that you have realized. And maybe just that perspective in terms of what I'm hearing from elsewhere might be of some use to you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Some of the problems that have come up here are regarding the permitting processes within our watershed when it comes to any development or any changes, whether it's a notification, whether it's a permit. And Lisa did send out a document called legislature and all this other stuff. But what I'm hearing from a lot of the contractors and landowners is that it's become so onerous, and that's why things are happening out here without the permits or notification, because they're not doing it in a timely enough fashion.
Yeah.
Okay?
And so I guess, and I wouldn't say it's just here that people are doing things without permits. I would say that's Province wide. There has been funding has been put forward for increased staffing in the authorization and permitting departments in water, because that was identified as one of the primary, areas where they weren't meeting objectives was in authorizations and permitting. Things were taking too long, things were getting backlogged, and permits were just not getting processed in a timely fashion. So there has been funding, so there are going to be more staff hired on to deal with permits and authorizations. I guess you can look at it as two ways. It's onerous, but if you want good water quality, you need to do the right thing. So, yes, you have to fill out a page that tells me, so you want to do something below the high water mark on Crown land, you need to apply for a Water Act notification. You need to fill out a document, it's free, and it says where you live, how much land you're going to disturb, what you're going to do, when you want to do it, and who you're going to hire to do the work if you have to hire someone to do it. And in return for that, you'll get a letter that says, proceed, and here are best practices for you to follow so that you can ensure you don't break any legislations like the Federal Fisheries Act, and that will help you retain the water quality and the riparian features and functions and all those other values that you do see on the lake. So, it's a permitting process. It's got to happen, and it's a little bit onerous, but it's also one of those mechanisms that will help maintain the beautiful Christina Lake that you have.
I think what we need to realize is Christina Lake has done an awful lot of work, and our lake management plan is known everywhere. I am so happy to see all of you out here today, because this conversation that takes place every year is one of the best venues to understand and to dialogue together that any community could ever have. We are fortunate enough to do that, and we were fortunate even to get the lake management plan here together. So, special thank you to all of you guys who came out here today, because it's important. It's really important for us, and it's important for you guys. And so we've talked about having a summer session. Bill Sturco's group, the lake waterfront property owners. We think that Brenda and I have been throwing this around, and I think some others have been throwing this around, that a lake or a summer session like this maybe is the answer to try and get some more fact and positive information out there. Now, I know that's not easy, but we're willing to try. We've been working pretty closely with Bill Strickler's group, and we're hoping that people will start to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish, and that it's actually what they want to accomplish too, maybe in a different way. So that's a possibility, and we're going to work on that and see if we can put something together. It is hard to get people together.
The summertime is the hardest time for anybody that works in the environmental field to get anybody out, but we'll try. So,
yeah. And it depends, of course, it's hard to get provincial people, it's hard to get, everybody wants their own vacation, right?
And they have vacation in summer. We don't know in summer.
Yeah, field work. But, some of us do want some time off sometime. So it's hard to put everything together in the summer, but we'll give it a try. So, any further comments? Yeah, Mike.
Grace, Brenda, on behalf of myself and some of the other lake property, Christina Lake owners, I'd really like to thank you so much for bringing together the people that you brought together for their presentations, for all your hard work, for an excellent lunch, and for making use of this venue. So thank you again for your time and energy on our behalf.
yes.
How many of you in here are directors on the stewardship?
Stand up.
Up.
Can you stand up?
Stand up, please. Okay, special thank you to all of you. Kudos.
I'm not a director.
Without Brenda, we'd have
Yeah, we know the amount of work Brent puts in. So thanks for coming. Please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them off to somebody. Either myself or Brenda or Alex or Mark Anderson. And